That's a movie, total skip.
It is pretty unengaging.
This is Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. This is also the video edition. This week we watched Two-Lane Blacktop. Kyle, tell me about The Open Road.
This is hard because we've seen a bunch of quote-unquote road movies this season. We've seen Duel, we saw Vanishing Point, and I have to be honest, even though this one is somewhat considered to be like the bigger classic of all of them, I actually kind of like this one the least. There are some parts that are compelling, but it's almost compelling in spite of itself. I think Warren Oates is great. He's a fantastic actor. I think he injects a lot of liveliness into the film. I also want to know more about his character in particular. There's these certain moments where he stops, whether it be to pick up a hitchhiker or to do some acts of kindness. Those little diversions from quote unquote the narrative are kind of the more interesting parts. But for a movie that is basically like, oh, this is like a race, and whoever wins is going to win the other person's car. That's not what this movie turns out to be. For me, it feels a little bit like a bait and switch, but also all the other stuff that includes James Taylor and Dennis Wilson are not good.
Take it easy, man. You're gonna kill
I don't know how else to put it. You watch 4 minutes of just them like with no expression on their face driving. And I think the biggest thing that you and I talked about, Dave, perhaps at the time, if we were locked in with what the culture was doing and understood where Dennis Wilson was coming from and where James Taylor was and this idea of like the hippie movement and hitting the open road and stuff, maybe we would feel more goodwill towards this. But in a 2021 context, it is pretty unengaging for like the majority of this film, with flashes of stuff like, oh, now we're going to get to do something. Oh, no, we're not. Oh, looks like it's going somewhere. And oh, no, it's not. Oh, this is going to be the time where that's not what this movie is. And so I kind of feeling a bit frustrated.
There are 2 experiences watching it, which is boring as fuck. Context around it is fascinating. Learning about James Taylor. So we're not Americans from the Midwest in 1950s and 60s, so we don't know much about James Taylor, but
I just want to keep pointing out, I like to know the one song from James Taylor.
Apparently he's the most well-sold, that's not the right phrase, American music artist, 6 Grammys, whatever. As it turns out, around this stage of his life, he was just breaking out. He does come from a wealthy family, but he's got heroin addiction and all this rehab history, and so it might explain some of his inability to emote.
Got some nice beaches down there.
And Dennis Wilson, as we learned, we didn't even realize this, was the 3rd Beach Boy, and he's a fucking nutter. Talking drug, alcohol abuse, mental
Manson
problems,
family.
and of course, the Manson family stuff, which he's directly involved in. And then Laurie Bird, unfortunately, is the one we talked about who killed herself in Art Garfunkel's apartment.
Right.
You know, it's tragic, true life world around this film is fascinating. Kyle learned that essentially this thing's improv, and they actually forced all these actors out on this highway and they shot it as they were going.
As they were shooting it. So
it's fascinating, but the movie sucks. I mean, that's such a theme, I think, this year.
I know we talk about it in the actual full episode, Dave, but like for you too, if you were to be told Duel, Vanishing Point, this movie,
that would be the order. Duel is more exciting. Vanishing Point was somewhere in between, is like the Billy Jack of car movies. And this thing, I don't know, maybe we're just missing it. I'm sure there's a lot of apologists for this film too. It's ranked pretty high on the Letterboxd app. I think if you're American, steeped in this culture of the open road and space and whatever, and you're white, this may speak to you on your cultural upbringing. Everybody in Canada too wants more space, want a bigger yard. I want to have a car. I want to travel into these open, not just prairie spaces. People in Toronto do this too. Like, it's cool to go camping. It's cool to just be out. And I don't really identify with stuff like that. So this movie really missed it for me. I mean, it's no $1 Million Duck. I didn't turn it off, but I struggled. The guy, what's his name? Warren Oates. If they just built the movie around that character and him picking up all these weird hitchhikers, that would have been a good movie.
Even if it was just vignettes that didn't even stitch together, just having weird adventures with all these different people he was picking up, and like, well, at least that's something. It's not just like a whole bowl of nothing that I'm watching people drive for a long time. The fact that the first original cut, I know this is like a rough cut, it was like 3.5 hours. How? What are you adding into this movie? Maybe that's where the plot went. I don't know.
It's not the worst that we've seen. And like a lot of these ones that are being reappraised, it has a lot of wealth underneath it. But as a movie, total skip. I would never recommend anyone sit through this unless they were studying the background things. I didn't like it, Kyle. I'm glad to not have to watch it again.
It's somewhat of an unfortunate last movie that we watched for the season. I mean, kind of on a
who can we blame?
On a low note,
right? It's like there's one person responsible for choosing
that is
the
not
names,
true.
titles, and sequence of these
films. True at all. Stop.
It's not me.
Stop putting it on me. me. You get to choose. It's not like it's like, I'm only going to make Dave watch these movies. You get to choose. I mean, the
We
machine
should've,
actually chooses, but deeper in fiction, we both have a say.
I'll give Kyle this much credit, this much leeway. He lives on Letterboxd, and Letterboxd prizes a lot of these, so they have a higher score. So it should have been a decent ending note. It just wasn't. So I blame you directly and personally for that.
Great. Perfect. Well, great. Have a great end of the year, everyone. Merry Christmas, right? Merry Christmas.
We did it. We finished 1971.
That's right.
Thank you for being with us. We'll
wrap up next week. If you
year
do celebrate
review.
Christmas, that's tomorrow. So, yay,
right.
everyone.
Time and illusion.
Let's go. Don't matter. We don't have to go anyway. Come on. Okay, she's gonna burn you.
If I wanted to bother, I could suck you right up my tailpipe.